Hey, stuffers. I remember a world where the Monopoly man wore a top hat and a monocle, and now my brain is suing me for fraud. Alex here, and welcome back to Stuff with Alex. If you saw The Empire Strikes Back, there is one line that defines cinema. One monumental parental reveal that lives in every pop culture parody and Halloween costume ever created. You know the line. It's when Darth Vader faces Luke Skywalker and says, "Luke, I am your father." It is iconic. It is undeniable. Except that's not what he said. We are dropping into the deep end right now because the real line, the line actually recorded, spoken, and archived in cinematic history is "No, I am your father." This isn't some deep-cut, forgotten B-side quote. This is the moment that shattered a generation of moviegoers, and yet, for millions of people, our shared collective memory insists that an extra word exists. This discrepancy is where reality gets filed for divorce, and it is the single most potent example of a phenomenon so bizarre, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about your own mind. The Mandela Effect. How can the most quoted line in cinematic history be a collective fabrication? Is your brain just a mushy, organic liar? Or did a time traveler accidentally kick a rock in 1979? Stuffers, smash that like button if you're already confused, or if you just spent 30 seconds Googling the real Star Wars script. The sheer effectiveness of the Darth Vader misquote reveals a crucial vulnerability in human cognition, the power of external influence or priming over primary memory fidelity. The slightly inaccurate line is dramatically superior and was repeated so often in secondary media and parodies that it ultimately overrode the original line for millions of people. By starting with the most visceral example of the collective lie, the audience immediately accepts that shared false memory is a tangible, potent force that affects even emotional, deeply ingrained memories. This sets a high standard for the level of shock and detailed analysis to follow throughout this journey. The Mandela Effect is, formally speaking, a situation in which a large mass of people share a strong conviction that a particular event occurred when, in fact, it absolutely did not. This isn't just one person making a mistake. It's a massive group experience where unrelated individuals share nearly identical yet inaccurate memories. Psychologists categorize this phenomenon as a popular and heavily debated type of false memory, defined by three prominent features. First, recalling entire events that simply never happened. Second, having warped memories where only some aspects are false. And third, the fact that these distorted memories are shared by vast groups of people who have no obvious connection to one another. The irony is that even though studies show that 76% of people make some type of mistake when recalling information, we all walk around convinced that our own brain is the gold standard of historical truth. This whole wild ride began in 2009, named by paranormal researcher Fiona Broome. Broome discovered that she was not alone in possessing a vivid, detailed memory of Nelson Mandela dying while incarcerated in a South African prison sometime in the 1980s. For her and others, the memory included specific details, news coverage, the funeral, and widespread public mourning. The actual reality, however, is radically different. Nelson Mandela was released from prison, went on to become the president of South Africa, and did not die until 2013. The fact that such a globally significant historical figure could be the subject of such a detailed, widely shared, and yet completely incorrect recollection is what kicked off the debate. The Mandela Effect was successful because it exploited a massive information gap in the West, the years he spent imprisoned, allowing the brain, when faced with missing data regarding his status, to default to the most common narrative ending for a political prisoner: death in captivity. This act of cognitive gap-filling is known as confabulation, a subject we'll dive into momentarily. But it demonstrates that the shared false memory wasn't born from randomness, but from the brain's rational attempt to fill a logical void. Once Broom opened the floodgates, other examples of shared, incorrect memory began to surface, setting up the central conflict of this entire phenomenon: science versus metaphysics. The Berenstain Bears. Millions confidently recalled this beloved children's book series being spelled with an E as Berenstain Bears. The actual spelling has always been Berenstain. This seemingly small error foreshadows the upcoming discussion on linguistics and cognitive bias. The Monopoly Man. The rich mascot, officially named Rich Uncle Pennybags, is widely remembered as sporting a monocle. However, he has never worn one in the official branding. This sets up the perfect psychological test case involving cultural stereotypes and visual memory. Looney Tunes. For many, the title of the classic cartoon seems intuitively wrong. It is widely misremembered as Looney Tunes because tunes is short for cartoons and makes logical sense. However, the title has always been Looney Tunes, referencing the musical Merry Melodies cartoon shorts. The immediate tension created by these examples lies in the dichotomy. Either Fiona Broom is correct about alternate realities bleeding into ours, or doctors are correct that the human brain is simply operating with systemic and profound flaws in its memory storage and retrieval systems.
If you ever wondered why eyewitness testimony is terrible, the Mandela Effect is Exhibit A. Your brain is not a historian. It's an improv comedian trying to make the story sound good. Psychological researchers offer robust explanations for why these phenomena occur, rooting the Mandela Effect not in cosmic shifts, but in the highly reconstructive nature of human memory. Memory is not a video recording device. It is a fluid, reconstructive process, highly susceptible to modification, distortion, and external suggestion. One primary mechanism driving the Mandela Effect is confabulation, which has been described by doctors as honest lying. Confabulation occurs when the brain spontaneously generates false memories to compensate for gaps in recollection. The person truly believes the false memory. They are not intending to deceive. Instead, they are attempting to fill in holes with what they feel is the most likely or logical sequence of events. For example, a person who couldn't recall what happened to Nelson Mandela might logically conclude he died a long time ago in prison and then sincerely report remembering this fact. Furthermore, priming describes how factors leading up to or following an event affect our perception and memory of it. This mechanism explains the viral spread of Mandela effects online. Research indicates that asking leading questions online, such as, "Nelson Mandela died in prison, right?" subconsciously motivates others to agree, reinforcing the false memory across the community. This is especially dangerous because the simple act of continually recalling something, even if incorrect, builds conviction and integrates the inaccurate details into other people's memories as truth. Another core vulnerability is source monitoring error. This refers to the difficulty our brains have in distinguishing the source of a memory. Did we see it in a film, hear it in a rumor, or did it happen in real life? These errors blur the line between real and imagined events. This phenomenon has been studied extensively, notably with the Lost in the Mall procedure, where detailed false childhood memories were successfully planted into participants' minds, demonstrating how easily memory fabrication can occur. The collective nature of visual Mandela effects, such as the Monopoly Man's non-existent monocle, can be attributed to expectancy bias, often called the stereotype trap. The consistency of error here is noteworthy. The brain sees a wealthy figure with a top hat and cane, and culturally, that stereotype requires a monocle. The brain automatically fills in or auto-completes the image based on ingrained cultural knowledge rather than empirical observation. The observation that these false memories are so consistent across people suggests a profound commonality in our cognitive biases rather than random isolated glitches. Our brains appear to operate under the same predictive rules, including the rules that cause us to make predictable mistakes. The seemingly trivial case of the Berenstain Bears provides a perfect demonstration of a shared cognitive default. The widespread memory of the name as Berenstain is not arbitrary. The analysis indicates that this is a linguistic trap. The suffix "steen" is far more common in surnames, especially those of German or Jewish origin, than the unusual suffix "stain." Consequently, the brain defaults to correcting the name to the more familiar, logically common variant. The actual spelling is an attempt at a Slavic-colored pronunciation of the family name from Ukrainian Jewish immigrants, making it linguistically vulnerable to phonetic correction by the masses. This consistency and error argues strongly against the randomness of parallel universes and for the systematic nature of human cognition. The overwhelming conclusion from the psychological perspective is that the struggle lies in the fact that our conviction in a memory grows stronger over time, even as the memory itself degrades and becomes increasingly inaccurate.
This entire phenomenon demands intense visual scrutiny because the Mandela Effect often hits hardest when it corrupts high-frequency, low-detail corporate logos and pop culture icons. The sheer consistency of these visual errors points to deeply ingrained psychological shortcuts. The visual Mandela Effect involves widely shared, confident, yet false memories of famous characters and branding, a phenomenon which has been formally studied by researchers at the University of Chicago's Brainbridge Lab. Pikachu's tail. One major example is the collective memory of the Pokémon mascot, Pikachu, having a distinct black tip on the end of its tail. The character has never appeared this way, yet participants in studies consistently replicate this exact error when asked to draw the character from memory. This suggests a cognitive error where the brain conflates Pikachu's specific markings with the visual characteristics of other related characters. The fruit of the loom cornucopia. Perhaps the single most baffling visual Mandela effect is the recollection of the Fruit of the Loom logo featuring a cornucopia, the horn of plenty. A cornucopia symbolizes abundance and harvest, and while it fits perfectly with the logo's theme, the icon has never been part of the official brand. This serves as a definitive illustration of expectation bias, where the associative logic of the brain overrides visual fidelity. The brain reasons that a logo featuring fruit and the word loom should include a symbol of harvest, and it fabricates the image to match the cultural brand trope. C-3PO's silver leg. The beloved Star Wars protocol droid is universally remembered as entirely gold. However, viewers are shocked to learn that in the original films, C-3PO has one silver leg. This subtle, persistent visual error suggests that because the majority of C-3PO is gold, the brain simply ignores or quickly processes the single silver element, substituting a plausible alternative. This demonstrates how high-frequency, low-detail visual exposure allows the brain to substitute a plausible, homogeneous alternative for a slightly discordant detail. Beyond accessories, the collective memory also struggles with spelling and punctuation, revealing the brain's preference for linguistic familiarity. Kit Kat. The missing hyphen is a pervasive memory error. Millions confidently recall the candy bar being spelled Kit Kat, yet the official branding has always been Kit Kat. Oscar Mayer versus Oscar Mayer. The famous hot dog brand is frequently misspelled as Oscar Mayer, driven by the fact that Mayer is a far more common surname than the correct spelling, Meyer. Febreze. The air freshener is often recalled with an extra E as Febreze because the sound of the word suggests a double E suffix. The sheer volume of visual and textual data consumed daily necessitates that our brains use rapid processing heuristics. The visual Mandela effects expose a flaw in this rapid processing system, confirming that we often see what we expect to see, rather than processing what is actually there.
This is the point in the debate where simple psychology starts to sweat. The existence of minor errors in logos or quotes is one thing, but the collective memory of an entire full-length feature film that never existed challenges the limits of mere suggestion. The existence of a 1990s genie movie titled Shazaam, starring comedian Sinbad, is arguably the most powerful piece of non-scientific evidence for reality alteration. Theorists remember specific details, the box art, Sinbad's outfit, and even plot points. Yet no copies, reels, or records of this film exist in this reality. The robust psychological explanation for this phenomenon is a powerful source monitoring error combined with memory scaffolding. This memory is almost certainly a conflation, or building of memory upon a related true event, with Shaquille O'Neal's 1996 genie film, Kazam. The existence of a similar element, Kazam, provides just enough structure for confabulation to build a completely false, detailed memory of an entire complex product. The depth of the Shazam memory is terrifying, as it demonstrates that source monitoring errors don't just cause a small misquote, they can literally conjure complex artifacts of popular culture. Drop your wildest theory in the comments. Is it possible that millions of people subconsciously agreed that a Sinbad genie movie was far superior to a Shaq genie movie, and their brains collectively filed a retcon request? This phenomenon extends to other high-stakes pieces of media. Queen's Anthem. Millions of people who grew up singing Queen's We Are the Champions confidently remember the song concluding with Freddie Mercury belting out the line, "Of the World." However, the recorded version actually ends abruptly without the phrase. This is a classic example of priming at work. The phrase "of the world" is used earlier in the verse, and the brain primes it to be the climactic expected final line, fabricating the ending to satisfy narrative closure. JFK's car. Many historical records are challenged by Mandela Effect, including the car carrying President JFK during his assassination. Many recall it being a two-row, four-seater vehicle, but photographic evidence shows it was a six-seater. The analysis indicates that the psychological model is very effective at explaining near misses and misquotes, but the Shazam memory remains a fascinating, complex challenge. The unexplained residue of such a detailed shared false memory is the narrative bridge required to transition from science to the grander, more terrifying possibility of reality alteration.
When the psychological explanation feels too neat, especially concerning massive, shared, complex falsehoods like Shazaam, the conversation inevitably abandons logic and shifts to the metaphysical. Conspiracy theorists argue that the systematic, non-random nature of these collective errors points to an external, reality-level cause. The core concept proposed by Fiona Broome and her followers is the alternate reality hypothesis. This theory posits that the Mandela Effect is proof that individuals, sometimes in great numbers, hopped timelines, retaining fragments of memory from the old universe. In one reality, Mandela died in the 80s. In another, he lived until 2013, and the people who experienced the former reality now inhabit the latter, with their memories as proof of the shift. This idea is often framed using metaphors familiar from science fiction. The Mandela effects are likened to software glitches or system errors in a virtual reality system, such as the USS Enterprise's holodeck. Furthermore, the time travel paradox is frequently invoked. If time travelers alter some small thing in the past, the present magically changes, but those who remember the original timeline experience the Mandela effect. The theory that currently dominates the Mandela effect debate is simulation theory, championed by philosopher Nick Bostrom. This view suggests that our entire reality is an advanced computer simulation, and the Mandela effects are direct evidence of flaws in the simulation's code. The success of this theory is rooted in its ability to translate abstract metaphysical concepts into familiar digital metaphors, making the conspiracy immediately relatable to a technologically savvy audience. Code rewrites and patches. Theorists suggest that mass memory discrepancies are the result of developers correcting bugs or rewriting historical data, often resulting in a change that is only partially distributed across the system, causing memory sync errors. Rendering errors. The idea here is that reality only renders what we need to see. If the past exists as compressed data, memory glitches occur when the simulation attempts to access this historical data on the fly, sometimes filling in the gaps incorrectly, thereby creating the shared false memory. The avatar sync. Some theorists suggest that human consciousness might be separate from the simulated physical body, the avatar. Memory glitches then occur when the simulation struggles to sync the consciousness, the player, with the avatar's data, potentially retrieving hazy fragments from another playthrough or an alternate timeline. The ultimate nexus point for the conspiracy theories is the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. The fear is that CERN, through its high-energy physics experiments, is destabilizing the very fabric of our reality, causing the timeline shifts and simulation errors that produce the Mandela effect. The underlying emotional driver of this theory is the deep, profound anxiety that large-scale, unknown scientific forces are recklessly altering our world. This analysis points out that the CERN theory is a classic correlation as causation error. It conflates highly complex science with strange anomalies to create a terrifying possibility. So, either millions of highly funded scientists are trying to unlock the secrets of the universe, or they're just rebooting the server and forgetting to clear the cache. The phenomenon of the Mandela effect, whether viewed through the cold lens of psychology or the cosmic drama of simulation theory, proves one singular, undeniable fact. Human perception is fundamentally unreliable. Our own minds, often aided by misinformation and cultural expectation, are easily manipulated. The core struggle that fuels the entire debate is the creepy, eerie feeling that comes from the realization that we do not have good control over our own memories. The actionable conclusion derived from this analysis is the necessity of wisdom and discernment. In an age where digital reality is constantly shifting and collective falsehoods are easily manufactured and widely shared, focusing on verifiable, anchored truth must be our highest priority. The psychological evidence confirms that relying solely on our own understanding, our confident yet flawed memory, can lead us far astray. The abundance of counselors and community perspectives offers safety and stability in seeking truth.
we must acknowledge that human ways of seeing are limited and imperfect. In response to the pervasive nature of conspiracy and the confusion over reality, the concluding thought is a call for humility and trust in what is greater than our own flawed perception. Don't get distracted by endless loops of speculation about the code of the cosmos or theories that offer only temporary fascination. The most profound wisdom found when confronting these issues is to look beyond the immediate, mutable evidence of our senses. The ultimate antidote to collective error and mental uncertainty is this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5-6. This timeless principle directly confronts the core error of the Mandela Effect, the unwavering yet faulty reliance on our own understanding or personal memory rather than an objective, foundational truth. Okay, thanks for watching. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.